People from Texas A&M have a better understanding of growing algae than people from MIT, because it's a plant you're cultivating. What happened to this was these posts with a whole bunch of clear tubes running in between the posts. Looks like a fence, rail fence. The algae stuck to the inside. No way to clean it out. It quits working. No light's getting in. Here's another one that was interesting. This was sent to me by somebody down in Australia. And you know, they have ranches they call stations there, and they have a lot of these water tanks on the stations. And somebody decided that they would just use some of those tanks because they were cheap to build and easy to build, and they just wrapped coils of clear tubing around them. Well, same thing as a biofence. Thing sticks. You don't have a 200-foot long pipe cleaner to run through there and clean it out. The other thing is, think of trying to cover 300 to 500 acres with these units. That's quite a project. Now, some of the things that do work are like these tanks. This is in California. Yes?
Why couldn't they just run a pig through the thing, clean it out, and then start over again?
Curvature and the size. They were only using tubes about this big around. The curvature, they had more of a problem doing that, and it didn't clean it well. They were not using a polycarbonate tube because they needed the flexibility to wind it. So therefore, the algae was actually going into the pores of the tube, and it just didn't come out.
Pig would not clean it.
Yeah, it just didn't come out well. They tried a couple of things to try and do it. They even tried Cloroxing it out.
These are some kind of polycarbonate tube. They couldn't use glass tubes.
It's a curve. It's out in the open. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else they tried. I just got this one sent to me. But that's a good question. Open tanks. This is in California, and you can actually see where they're bubbling some of the CO2 through this. This is really ready for harvesting. It's a pretty thick coating on the top of the tank. And you can even see the California coastline in the background. Pivot ponds. Pivot ponds was one of the first ways that people were growing algae. And if this looks suspiciously like waste treatment plants, the guys that developed this stuff came out of the waste treatment plant industry. So yeah, it was. Then you've got open ponds. Now these are also in California. They're down in the, I think, in the Baja area of California. But what they do with this is they just leave it sit out there and grow. And this is one of the red algae. That is the right color. The picture's not off. And what they will do is after they get a pretty good bloom on the top, then what they did was they just moved it into the, and I don't think you can see them here, well, not very well, but right up in here are the small pond areas that are closed in. They would move the algae laden water into that, and then they would let it evaporate, and then it would go in and scrape it. But again, labor intensive, batch process, slow, and the productivity per acre is not there. Not a commercially viable thing. Next, we go to things like what people have always asked me, why can't you use artificial light? You can. This picture is of a laboratory in Czechoslovakia where they are using pulsating light, and it is not outside at all. And does it grow? Yeah, they're getting pretty good results with it. The only problem is that you couldn't pin them down at this point on what was the actual cost per gallon to produce. So is it commercially viable? I get back to my statement I made to you. Can you grow algae in any of the ways you've heard about? Yeah. Is it commercially viable? Yeah, I want to see the picture, the numbers on it. Then the open raceway ponds. This is a concept drawing of the people up in Colorado called Solex. And what Solex did, they got a grant through working with the Ute Indians. And they went down in Colorado, near on the Colorado-Arizona border where the Utes are, and they actually set up a test farm, I think 4 acres down there, and they are working with Ute Indian labor, and they are trying to perfect their system. They're telling us that it's about, I think said 24 to 28 months before they would be ready to actually build and sell anything. The difference between a raceway pond and what I'm doing with the equivalent of raceway pond in the air and then cover it over so it's closed is the fact that my systems are small enough, they're 2 foot by 2 foot, that they are transportable. They're 38-foot sections, so you can pick it up and move it. And that's nice for the people who are financing some of these deals because they're saying, well, kind of hard to repossess that concrete thing in the ground. But if you've got something that's up there on these support poles that we can come in and unbolt and take away, and it's got serial numbers on it and all that, then yeah, we can finance